non-profit research organization that provides high quality uh, and impartial science on health effects of air pollution to inform policy and decision making worldwide. And in HI, we work in three different verticals: energy, environment, health, and global initiatives. So, under our global initiatives program, we are active in South Asia and East Africa. So, in the past, HEI has conducted several in person and virtual training series for early career researchers on air pollution and health in South Asia. And this year, we have a five-part training series between Jan and Feb 2026 focused on air quality monitoring using low cost sensor. So this series will cover the following topics in the slide. So the first session was on the overview of low cost sensor, and today's session, the second session, is on the siting and the network design for the low cost sensor. And we have three other sessions lined up in the coming weeks on data management, maintaining and managing a large low-cost sensor network. And we also have a session on global best practices and available toolkits. So the first session was on the low-cost sensor overview, so which was delivered by Dr. Srikanth Vakasala. So he provided us a brief introduction to the low-cost sensor, available types and technologies, what are its applications, limitations, and what are the different components of low-cost sensor. The slides and the recording is available on our website, so I can share the link with you all on the chat box. And today's session is focused on siting and network design for low-cost sensor. And this session will be led by Dr. Sofiya Rao from IIT Delhi and Dr. Dio Okure from AirQo. We are pleased to have both of the speakers here for today's session. And the aim of this today's session is to bring together both the regional and the global perspectives on the low-cost sensors. Each speaker will have 20 to 25 minutes. After first, we'll invite Dr. Sophia to for the presentation, and then Dr. Diu. After that, we have allotted around 30 minutes for a question and answer. So we encourage the participants to use the Q&A option to post your questions. So I would like to introduce Dr. Sophia first. Sophia Rao is a principal scientist and Professor Sagnik's group at Center for Atmospheric Sciences, IIT Delhi, where she leads all the low-cost air quality sensor research activities. She have completed a PhD from IIT Delhi in the area of aerosol cloud interaction. Her research focuses on design, deployment, and performance evaluation of large-scale air quality networks, advanced analysis of air pollution data, and development of scientifically robust methodologies for urban air quality and exposure assessment. In addition to her academic role, she also serves as a consultant to Haryana State Pollution Control Board on activities and also as a scientific advisor to Gurugram Metropolitan Development Authority for air quality initiatives across Gurgaon and other parts of NCR, and actively contributing for evidence-based policy formulation and regulatory support. Over the past few years, he has also been actively engaged in field-based implementation programs and public and institutional initiatives aimed at addressing air pollution at its root and translating scientific solutions into ground actions. Thank you for joining us today, Sophia. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Abinya, for such a lovely introduction. Let me just share my screen. So, a second, sorry. Is my screen available to Abinya?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. I am Dr. Sophia Rao. Today, the focus will be more on how we design the network and my today whatever examples I will be putting, those are are based on India specific and majorly on the North Indian region. So why locus sensor study is required. So before jumping to the exact topic, I would like to pay some attention why LCS study is required. So the major challenge is the lack of monitoring stations, and when the designing and sites for the CAQMs was actually planned, so that designing of CAQMs are not fitting in today's world, so, in today's study. So that is why the locus sensor networks are actually fulfilling the gaps. Also, they are providing good support to the CAQM to collect the AQI data. The second is the inadequate data of AQI. So for calculation of AQI, we need minimum 16 hours of data set, but continuous data from CAQM, it is not possible uh, because of multiple reason. Maybe sometimes the calibration is going on, or the instruments are degraded, or some error is coming and power failure. So because of that, we need LCS sensors. And the third most important, which is that CAG report of Delhi in 2025, we currently lack real-time information on emission patterns and source profile. Also, we measure pollution levels, but we don't have continuous dynamics data on who is emitting and when and how much. So just to get these information up to date, we really need a local sensor network across India. So now, the topic from here onwards, I'll be talking more on the network designing. So the designing, when we design a network, the first and foremost thing we look into is the objective of the study. If you take an example, if the study is basically the exposure assessment, the focus is what people are actually breathing in their daily lives, means set up the sensor near the residential area, school area, or hospitals. We have actually a very good study design, which I will be showing in the further slides. The study by AIMS Delhi and ICMR. So there we actually measure the exposure of the pregnant woman, and we set up the devices. We gave one devices to personally the lady to measure her every day 24 hours exposure, and we set up one outdoor unit very close to the neighboring her residence. So this is how actually we can measure the exposure assessment using the locus sensor. If we talk about the hotspot identification, the network is designed to detect local pollution, peak and spatial resolution. So we have a very good example for that is Gurugram. And uh, to setting up the network for the hotspot study, it actually gives you at what time the air pollution is picking up, and at what time we actually need to take the we need to take the actions to get down the PM concentration. And third one is the policy evaluation. Like if we talk about Delhi NCR, so when the GRAP is implemented, do we really shut down all the activities, or we need to focus on specific intervention, specific things like like majorly the construction ban or the industrial reasons. So I will be showing the further examples with the outcomes in the further slide. Now coming to the technical consideration. So to set up the locus sensor, the height from the ground, what we usually keep in consider is 2 to 4 meter, which is basically the first floor. If we talk about the floor consideration, then we prefer to set up the locus sensor majorly on the first floor of the building, either it's a rooftop or the house. The second is the power and connectivity. So if we talk about the rural areas and the urban areas in India, in Delhi NCR also, if we set up the network in the Delhi and surrounding areas like Gurugram, Faridabad, it is still easy to maintain because in these areas the proper power supply is there. But if you are going to the rural areas like moving towards Punjab, the rural areas, there is no 24 power 24 power supply, and also the network issues. So what we have with this good uh, a good year of working, we figured out the multiple ways, like if we provide good power bank, or the if we run the loco sensor on the solar, then we can actually keep the sensors active. And apart from that, the connectivity also, if we talk about Delhi and Gurugram and Faridabad, we prefer to use the host Wi-Fi, and we provide the dongles to the rural where actually everyone cannot afford the Wi-Fi also. So we prefer to give the personal SIM cards to run the loco sensor. And we safety and accessibility is also the major challenge. We set up this network. The reason is people, it's a 50,000 INR device, or sometimes it's more if it is gaseous. Then we face that PE at multiple locations. If we are not setting up the sensor at designated place, either the batteries are missing, or the sometimes uh, uh, the dongle is not there. So we also have to keep in consideration about the all the devices, and set up the loco sensor at a very specific designated place. The third most important thing which I want to talk about is choosing an appropriate location for the loco sensor. So earlier we used to hang the device on wall as well as on the pole, but with a time of learnings and our analysis, that we found that the pole is the best suitable location to hang the loco sensor, so that all the obstructions are avoided. Apart from that, we also may keep in mind or make sure that there is no exhaust nearby the loco sensor. So these are the few things that we keep in mind while setting up the sensor. Now these are kind of engagement of the hosts. So when we feel that it's in rural area, actually we feel challenging to set up the network, because people feel that it is not it's a lack of understanding or lack of study, lack of knowledge, that the purpose of loco sensors. So we face difficulty in setting up the network in rural area comparison to the urban areas. So this is one slide on which I want to show that we have good calibration collocation facility. We make sure that the sense all the sensors whatever is going to the field. First, we set up those sensors at the collocation test bed, and make sure that R square should be 90 greater than 90%. And we have a BAM at rooftop of block 6. And we have specific SOPs which we always fulfill before deploying or before looking into the any network, or like designing in any network. So this from here onwards, I'll be showing examples. So first of all, the Gurugram example. So we have 115 loco sensors across Gurugram. So as we know, in Delhi, we have good information that there is 13 hotspots across Delhi, but in Gurugram, there is no such information available. So what we did with the support of Gurugram Metro, GMDA and the State Pollution Control Board, we were, and of course, with the support of Google, we were able to set up a good sensor network across Gurugram. So no information was available about the sectors. So what we did with the support of GMD, we set up in each and every sectors one low cost sensor. We started this initiative in August 2024, and till now the sensors are running. And yes, we from the past 1 year of data, we noticed that in sector we noticed that sector 15 is actually the most polluted. Sector 15 and sector 25 is actually the most polluted regions across the Gurugram based on past 1 year of data. And uh, and as of now, using these every sector wise information, using this data, we can provide to the information to the government and the GMDA and MCG what actions to be taken. Like if we want to do water sprinkling, then where the water sprinkling can be done, or how to whether from actually this sector wise deployment, we will also get to know that where the emission and what kind of emission is higher, so the appropriate action can be taken by the government. I In the further slides, I'll be showing that how the like with by setting up the sensors in across in all this um, sectors, we got to know that which hour of the day is more polluted and which day of the week, like whether it's weekday or the weekend, or both are equally polluted. These kind of information can be provided by setting up the network of low cost sensor across the big city like Gurugram. Now, this is again the health risk index, and as you see here, that sector 11, 12 are comparatively low risk zone, and sector 21 is high risk zone for PM10. But while we talk about PM 2.5, that entire Gurugram is on the high risk zone. So GMDA, so actually in this study, GMDA we found very helpful. So all the sensors are deployed in the government offices, whether it's public health offices, or the hospitals, or the police station. So we in this deployment, we haven't used any resident space. All the Because of good support from the government, we were able to set up all the devices at the government places and offices. No, this is another good outcomes, like peak hours of PM 2.5 over different sectors. We notice that PM concentration also varies from different sector, and we provide outcomes. Okay, at 6 a.m., if the PM 2.5 is high, then the anti-smoke gun can, or the mechanical sweeping, or the other technologies can be applied in these areas to reduce the air pollution. Now, coming to the second example, which is actually localized intervention. So, this is a very 6 days a small pilot that we set up in Delhi with only 3 devices. So, this, if you see here in this extension pocket C, which is near ashram area, there was one road construction was going on, and we set up the devices, three loco sensor at different location. One where actually the intervention was happening, the other two a little bit farther. Then we were able to convince to government that if you go far from the sensors, the area of intervention, then CAQMs or the sensors are not able to capture the local emission. So this is the one example when we actually show the government that local sensor are actually uh, complementing the CAQMs, provide helping CAQMs to provide more robust and local based information, because from this kind of study the CAQM was not able to capture the pre and post difference when the intervention was done, but the sensors which we placed at exactly the locations were able to capture. Once the so in the pre intervention the PM 2.5 is 192, the inter in 194, the intervention during the intervention time means when the construction was going on or the road pavement was going on, the PM concentration was 256, and the post intervention the PM reduces to the 172, although this exact value was not captured by the CAQM. So if we design the study in that way, then we actually get to know the local contribution of the PM concentration. Now the third similar example, but with more local sensor deployment. So the similar this study was we did with Air Pollution Action Group in 2024. What we did, we chose three locations: Jahangirpuri, Karol Bagh, and Rohini. And APEC provide us 65 long-term issues to us, and we set up the sensor. We actually first create a boundary of or you can say the we create we created a network of locus 10 locus sensor in this area, and then captured the emission, whether the same the PM concentration pre, during, post when the intervention is resolved. And we make sure that CAQM, this area which we choose, was hardly a kilometer away from the CAQM monitoring station. And the outcome, these are the few were resolved by the government, and we were able to identify the pre and post difference, like unpaved roads and potholes, mulba dumps, garbage dumps, broken footpaths, etc. And this is what actually this is one of the example. So what we did, so this whole road was broken, and we set up 3 units of locus sensor in this 500-meter broken road, one at the beginning, one at the mid, and the other one is at the end. So sensor reading was showing the average of these three was showing 290, the CAQM was showing 230. While when after 14 days, when the issue is completely resolved, we notice that there is a reduction of PM concentration, which is 171, and CAQM was showing 207. If you see the pre and post difference in the CAQM, it was not that much high, but in the locus sensor readings, it was there is a difference of almost 120 microgram per meter cube. So if we plan or network, design the network of low cost sensor to resolve these kind of issues, then we actually will be able to provide good information to the government stakeholders and ask them to take the appropriate actions. The third example, this is actually the overall reduction at the same study that Jahangirpuri, we noticed the 26.6 reduction, Rohini in 15.7, and Karol Bagh it was 15.3. This is another example of this anti-smog gun that we actually performed here in IIT Delhi, IIT Delhi at Aurobindo Marg. So what we did, we set up a few sensors on the roads, like on both sides of the road, one at the IIT Delhi main gate and the other one is at the JNU. And we noticed that whenever the anti smoke gun is crossing the road, there is an immediate reduction in the PM concentration, but after a specific time it starts increasing. So I just wanted to convey, if we do these kind of small networking or designing of the loco sensor studies, we will be able to conduct, or we will be able to uh, provide evidence to the government how we can reduce the air pollution. And there is very interesting study we recently doing with the UC Berkeley, that filling the spatial gap in monitoring, integrating into hybrid monitoring system. So what we have done here in the Samosa, the project name is Samosa, which is sensor based air monitoring observatory over South Asia. So what we have done, we wanted to capture uh, the biomass burning, which is actually coming from Punjab and moving downwind till Delhi. So we were able, by setting up this network, so this was the reason, and this purple are showing the stubble burning in 2024. And if you see, we actually were able to capture. So this is downwind loco sensor. So the moment the burning was happening and it was coming down, so some we were able to capture, okay, this is coming down and reaching to Delhi, to this area. And in this similar study, we also able to see whether the urban areas are polluted or the urban and rural, both the areas are polluted. So here is the good example. So here we set up this. This is the same loco sensor network. It is downwind, and we set up these red triangles are actually the non-urban side, rural areas, and these purple are Delhi. So we noticed, using this kind of network design, we noticed that villages, or you can say the rural area of nearby the Delhi NCR, are equally polluted, and with the outcomes, it is showing that it is actually more polluted than the Delhi itself. This is another West Bengal mobile monitoring plan we recently proposed, and it is actually in the process. So we set up we set up 5 to 6 loco sensor devices in the moving bus. And these buses are moving from one source to one place to this place, and they are continuously, it is capturing the emission of from using the loco sensor. Yeah, this is all my sharings from my projects. Thank you so much. If you have any question, please feel free to ask. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so. Thank you so much, Sophia, like for sharing the different case studies that you're currently working on. So I thought we'll take the questions at the end, but I think we have one question from Prince. I think that would be good if we can address now.
Yes,
Now,
please.
on the slide named issue addressed in Jahankipuri, how
Okay.
was the average is calculated? Was it a daily average? How was that calculated?
Okay, just let me again reshare my screen. So which slide is this?
Yeah, I think this one.
Okay. So this is actually what we did. We actually we set up we designed the network in such a way. First, before we were getting the information from the government that this issue, this road payment will be done from this time to this time, right? And then we collected the information from the 14 days prior to the intervention, 14 days during the intervention, and 14 days post intervention. And we it's a daily average, and then collectively we take the 14 days average and then calculated the difference.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think there is also one more question on the Gurugram project where the
Mm-hmm.
sensor was deployed across the city. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
there was a question on how did you find the account for the transboundary pollution you have, and how did you calculate the background or the baseline before the sensor was deployed?
So actually, we took the 5 year CAQM data because and also Airveda already there are few deployments in Gurugram, so we took the data from that, and now it's being a year, and the baseline we actually are in the process. It is not yet exactly we have the proper outcomes, but yeah, we have data from the CAQMs and as well as the Airveda earlier deployed in by some other projects.
Thank you, Sophia. I think other questions we can take at the end.
Sure.
So now I would like to invite Dr. Dio Okre for the next presentation. Dr. Dio Okre is an atmospheric scientist committed to advancing research capacity in Africa and in Global South. His research focuses on scaling transdisciplinary cross-border efforts for tackling global challenges in low reserve setting, largely concerned with developing continuous data infrastructure and advancing the critical interface between the science and policy. His background is in mechanical engineering and environmental science, and he coordinates research and global partnerships at AirQo, an Africa based research initiative championing new data derived approaches for tackling air pollution in African cities. His extensive research experience includes overseeing the co-design of air quality programs in over 10 cities across Africa, and he also significantly contributed to development of contextual frameworks to advance air quality and climate agendas, including the United Nations Environmental Assembly's 610 resolution on advancing regional cooperation for air quality, the East Africa vehicular emission limits, and the first air quality regulation for Uganda. He is also involved in the annual Africa Air Quality Forum, a knowledge platform for sharing and partnerships for solution in Africa, and serves as a co-facilitator for uh, Africa Clean Air Network. And he is also very closely associated with HEI. Over to you, Dio.
Uh, Thanks, Abhinaya. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. Thanks for the introduction. I'm glad to meet everybody and really honored to be a part of today's session. So I'll go straight to my talk, which I framed around data-driven sensor network development for continuous monitoring, and I'm using continuous very deliberately, but with a focus on sharing experiences from our work in African cities. You already introduced me, so I don't want to spend time on this, but just to say that I'm giving this session from the lens of the AirQo experiences. We are based in Uganda, and our strategic mission really is to advance Africa's participation in developing and using robust and scalable data infrastructure as a foundation for advancing clean air actions in the continent. I think in the spirit of South to South knowledge exchange, it would be important to provide this overview about pollution in the region in Africa. And I want to just highlight 3 points. At one, it is true that the health impacts obviously are still very prominent in the global south setting. That includes Africa with 1.2 million deaths each year. And HI does a great job in trying to compile these studies. Secondly, that a lot of the pollution dynamics we have are heavily influenced by local sources coming from transportation, domestic combustion activities, which I believe is fairly relatable, and this constitutes more than 50%. In some instances, even more than 70% of the pollution levels. And also, again, this could be applicable as well in other South Asian contexts, that a lot of the challenges we have from access to data, collaboration, and also policy. It's still, they are largely shared across the region. The picture is taken from Nairobi, which is the only capital city, the only city in the world with a national park. And onto the topic, I do want to provide this overview of the air quality of the monitoring landscape, and in particular highlighting the gaps in the data and also the emergence of sensors. I believe this is probably not new information to many people here, but just have 3 bullet points to, again, to confirm that. One, there's lots of countries and cities that do not have access to a single continuous monitor for air quality. And secondly, that we've also seen the emergence of local sensors increasingly becoming very prominent within the data landscape, and that government-run networks are actually less visible, or you find non-government initiatives kind of closing the gaps and in terms of monitoring, which I think it's very progressive in a way that if we prioritize the availability of data, then it makes it easier for us to sort of tackle the shared problem we're all trying to address. I did this work a while ago to look at a bibliometric snapshot of air quality, local sensors, the science of local sensors between over 20-year period from 2004 to 2023. And you see there is that upward trajectory growth in terms of the annual production, in terms of knowledge, at a rate of about 26%. This has been happening over the years, and you see that increasingly there is appreciation and uptake of local sensors. But at the same time, there are also significant barriers. I believe that's why this session like this is very important in terms of uptake and adoption for continuous initiatives. In other words, how we can be able to make this the sensors, application of sensors, more applicable and more useful. I won't spend time on this. This is summarized in the work we published in 2022, looking at trying to qualify what qualifies, what is considered to be low cost. Of course, as you see, there's variations in terms of the definition and the cost thresholds, but just to kind of illustrate what that means in practice. So I think it is important to look at this, fairly broad scientific question, that is the optimal framework for continuous data generation using local sensors. Again, I keep using the word continuous because it is important to emphasize the fact that when we are collecting data, that has to be, it has to be continuous because, the variations over time and space, that you need to be able to capture all the spatial, the heterogeneous, details when it comes to the data. So it's important that the monitoring infrastructure is offering that continuous data. So I would have loved to have this as a discussion slide, just kind of to hear perspectives. But I think we can, share this during you can put this in the chat, but just kind of understanding, if you look at your own context, maybe South Asia broadly, or even in Africa, what would we consider to be the typical sort of challenges associated with the continuous sensor network development? Because we know that on the one hand is just getting the sensor box, but then on the other hand is to make that actually work continuously in a way that gives data that could offer the same insights or data that can be, acceptable quality for decision making and for action. So if you try to categorize these challenges in 3 brackets, one as sort of logistical, looking at more broadly in terms of the challenges, but also data credibility that could be largely linked to the sensor limitations, and also the network management. I think I quite liked what Sofiya mentioned. I'm also going to talk about here in terms of community engagement, because that also comes in part of what I'll be highlighting earlier. So I would like to very much hear, your thoughts and your insights, and also your experience in terms of under each of these buckets, what challenges or what your experiences have been with sensor networks. And to add to that, I think there are three critical questions we will try to address here. But specific one, when you're talking about network design, how much sensors are enough? How many sensors, do we say, okay, fine, I think for this particular area, the city, this is where we stop. And secondly, how best can we deploy the sensors for the best possible, to get the best possible outcomes? In other words, you have a handful of sensors. How best can you, where do you pull them to be able to get the most? You can't have, sensors all over the place, but how best can you, have an optimal deployment that delivers the best possible outcomes? And thirdly, what are the most cost-effective approaches to manage sensor networks? As you'll see, the cost of sensors or the cost of data generation is not limited to the cost of the sensor box. But at the same time, if you have to stay within the scope of sensors, low-cost sensors, highlighting low cost, what would be the most cost-effective ways to make that a reality? And I'm coming to our experience here. I'm looking at, this is a synthesis of a couple of publications put together, and also, of course, based on our lived experiences, that we've been able to develop this integrated framework for content monitoring. And this has three interconnected tenets. One is the network itself, what you know as a physical network, comprising autonomous sensor boxes, and also distributed sensor network. So that's like sort of that's the first step. So these are all very interconnected. And secondly, which is very critical, is the aspect of data management, which has to do with the data credibility, that's the quality assurance, and also ensuring that the process of managing the network is also fairly automated, and it's the digital platforms as strong enablers to do that. So you have, on the one hand, how we can effectively manage the network, look at all the key network indicators, performance indicators, but on the other hand, also making this data available, and more importantly, most importantly, community ownership, and that is community participation. In all the other two steps, we have to make sure that, one, in developing the network, designing the network, there's community involvement, but at the same time, even in developing, the access interface, there's also community participation. So this is, in summary, what you look at as sort of a global framework that allows us to make low-cost sensors work based on lived experiences. So I'll go back to talk briefly to provide an overview about sensor placement, but specifically using a machine learning approach. This has helped us map out the six, what we call the checklist when it comes to network development. This list could be longer, and I'm also very curious and interested to know what this has been, in different contexts, in different areas. But the first point is, of course, defining your geographic area of interest. That's like, what could be, an airshed, or maybe a city X. Where are we going to do this work as like the first step? And secondly, understanding how many sensors you have at hand. In other words, you can't have too many sensors. So if you have 20 or 30 sensors, how many do you have available? That's critical information to have. Thirdly, it's to know the specific area of interest. I'm joining from Kampala. The metropolitan area has 4.5 million people, close to 5 million. There's lots of smaller urban divisions within the metropolitan area. So your city could be Kampala, the geographic area, or Kampala metropolitan, but the sensors you have or the interest could be a particular division within the region, within the area of interest. So that's one, next consideration, to be able to at least identify, what your focus is. And obviously, what we'll be able to do here is also include your design consideration. How far apart do you want your sensors to be from each other? And then a fourth point here is co-developing what we call the candidate sites. Now, we always encourage that when we go to city again, to the earlier point that, lots of cities still don't have, they're yet to see their first data point or their first, continuous monitoring setup. So going to city X, what we really encourage is that as you do this work or trying to develop candidate sites, we shouldn't restrict ourselves to the sensors available, but the candidate sites should be aspirational in a way that we are not necessarily designing sites for a project or for a particular project, but rather we're designing sites for a city to say, well, our wish list, our aspirations to have maybe 80 sensors, 80 monitoring sites. We have 20, but we would like to have 80. What that does is, as you're trying to, when the time comes for you to evaluate, which is the sixth point, to evaluate the network or try to see whether you have any redundancies in the data or whether you have additional resources, it's then easier for you. You don't have to redo the same process, but rather you're able to go back to your candidate sites that you will have co-developed, and then you're able to then fill in the gaps progressively. So you look at this as an iterative exercise in a way that, it keeps on, you keep on developing and improving, again, very much informed by the data. But as a first step, map out the candidate sites, obviously the considerations that Sofiya already shared about exposure activities, the sources and so on and so on, those collectively would then allow us to develop the candidate sites for the sensor network. The fifth point is you have also the reality that could, the model outputs cannot give you some of these realities. For example, the regulatory planning regimes, or some politician has made a pledge that, well, I would like to turn this into a market, industrial area. Some of those might just be stuck up in paper somewhere. So it's also important to take that into consideration to know that, well, as a city, the data says we need to monitor in X location, X, Y, Z. But at the same time, we have some priority locations, maybe special planning areas that we like to protect, we like to monitor. We have infrastructure development plans coming up in the next 3, 4, 5 years. So those could constitute what you call the must-have locations. And then lastly, after you've deployed the network, you have your sensors up and running. It is also very important to periodically, look at the data. You could have some redundancies that allows you to then, make decisions around, for example, whether you have, you need to shut down some sensors or you're over monitoring in some areas. You need to move sensors elsewhere. So it allows us to kind of keep this as an ongoing process. And that means this is not a one-off undertaking, and that's why the component of community ownership, which Sofiya highlighted, is very important, because then it also informs how it directly influences how the network eventually, the network performs, because you will rely on the community, on the host, to support the maintenance, to support the, things to do with, making sure the network is really stable and running. So we've developed this as I can share the link in the chat at some point. Okay, I think I'll skip this. I'll share the link later on that you can, be able to play with, but we have this publicly accessible interface that allows us to sort of, following some of these steps, we're able to kind of initially get some proposed locations, and then have that validation, of course, with the community, taking into account all these other factors, the master locations, the planning regimes, and some other details. Right. I realize I might have spent a bit of time in trying to in the earlier slide, but I thought this was equally important to highlight the question of quality assurance and quality control. Oftentimes we hear about calibration, but in overemphasizing calibration alone, I think we sometimes we could miss out on some of the critical details as well, because, as you know, we need robust methodologies and maintenance protocols to ensure the accuracy of sensors. The data quality will degrade over time, obviously, including leading to overestimation. I know this varies from place to place, but it is important to look at this more holistically and not just look at, oh, this needs to be calibrated, but then what about the other pieces, the other performance indicators? They're all equally important. So secondly, we also know that when it comes to the choice of sensors, because that's where it starts, you need to, take decisions to know which sensors to buy. We know many manufacturers are not very open with the performance, the uncertainty, but also know that that is an important decision metric for the initial choices. But it's probably only important at that stage. It's very, very critical for us to take that and try to develop this independent sense evaluation at the point of usage, and more importantly, focusing on the local, the contextual deployment conditions, development conditions, so that it's not just what the manufacturer provides, but rather we are continuously trying to test and see how the sensor performance can actually improve, or we can maintain, or can we improve data quality during the course of the monitoring. And then it's also important that in trying to do that, that will also require us to have access to reference monitors. As you'll see later, we have found, at least in the region here, the regional test centers. I think a few of you might have heard about AfriSet. We actually have several of those test centers within the region, in East Africa, in Kampala, in Nairobi, in Nigeria, and in Southern Africa. There's a couple of those, and it is our interest that we try to scale up some of these regional test centers so that the sensor community can be able to utilize the data coming from reference monitors to improve to improve the data and also support periodic corrections. But I do want to also highlight some of the important metrics when it comes to sensor quality assurance. That one, we need to ensure that the sensors are within the sensor, the inter-sensor correlation. If you're familiar with most of the sensor boxes now, many of them now come with dual sensors. So are we able to monitor? Do we know that the sensors within the monitoring unit are actually, agreeing? And secondly, if you have 10, 20 sensors, are they, what's the correlation between across the sensors? Even before we talk about the reference monitors, what's the correlation between, are the sensors agreeing? And thirdly, of course, correlation with the reference monitors. I do note that as well. Of course, correlation is an important metric, I think, across. If you look at some of the different initiatives that use local sensors, I think correlation seems to be a strong indicator. Then, of course, the data completion. There is no point in having, we have 100 sensors, and then you only have access to, it doesn't matter the quality. Out of 24 hours, you have data for 5 hours a day. That doesn't really help much. So is the data actually complete? What's the completion? Are you able to ensure that sensors are performing to the level that delivers complete data sets that can be used for analysis, including advanced applications like health exposure studies? We've been able to build, at least across all these indicators, if on the AirQo platform, we're able to build at least the digital interface that allows us to at least track all these performance indicators in near real time. And as a wrap up, right, just some photos about, look at some of the test centers we have. This is Lagos, Nairobi, Accra, Ghana, that's AfriSite, and different Kampala and other cities. So in summary, this is what we've been trying to do, what we are doing at AirQo. One, of course, set up this network with sensors, and of course ensuring that there's access to whenever access to the data through different channels, and just for illustration purposes. And I think that's where my presentation ends, and apologies for if I've taken a lot of time, but thank you so much, and looking forward to the rest of the discussions.
Thank you so much, Leo. I think you were right on time. So there were a couple of questions on sensor validation, calibration. I think Sophia answered few. So, like to explain to like researchers, um, like in simple terms, what do you mean as co-location? What do you mean as calibration? And at what frequency, like at what stage of the installation you conduct this co-location experiments, and at what frequency you conduct the calibration experiments? Can you explain that in a simpler term so that yeah, now how do you validate a sensor?
So, okay, should I start?
Yep,
Yeah.
you
So,
can.
so actually we have, as I mentioned in one of my slide also, we have good calibration co-location facility at test bed. Test bed actually we usually call it at IIT Delhi rooftop. And IIT Delhi is at the center of Delhi, and here you find actually the good pollution. The pollution amount is pretty much equally higher across the sea. So we have one BAM in IIT Delhi, and we make sure that that BAM is actually very close, within a proximity of 1 meter to the test bed, and the inlet of BAM is actually at the similar distance where we hang the sensors. So for 15 days, when we get the sensors from the manufacturer, we keep all the sensors to the test bed. We make sure we check the performance. We have multiple ways to calibrate, like sometimes it's machine learning, or sometimes we just check the r square RMSE error with the BAM, and then we make sure that the r square with the BAM of the sensors should be 90%. And then once that sensor clears that criteria, then we deploy the sensors in the field. And also, if we talk about Delhi and the nearby region, where actually PM concentrations in winter start is most of the time above 300 250. So we also faced multiple calibrations. So we make sure when the device performance is degraded, then we replace the device with the new sensor and put the device again at the calibration test bed and check the performance. If the sensor still faces the same issue which the sensor was facing in the field, then we send the device to the manufacturer and ask whether check whether it's the sensor it's manufacturing defect, or the sensor will not work in the future. So that's why I mentioned on the chat also that we keep 10, minimum 10 sensors backup option if we are setting up a network of good 100 sensors. It depends, like if we are setting up 50 sensors, because we noticed in Delhi NCR the failure of the sensors is comparatively higher.
Do you like to add?
Yeah, I think conceptually not so different, but I think in terms of just to kind of walk through our deployment pipeline is you have access to the physical sensors that you will have acquired. And I'm sorry, my video is off. After acquiring the physical sensors, we are developing most of the sensors locally, the sensor boxes at the university. But even having physical sensors from elsewhere, the first step is to have those co-located with each other to monitor those two indicators that I mentioned. One is the intra-sensor correlation, just looking at how the performance. We do this at least for 7 days, 2 weeks in some instances. So it allows us to, even before we do the field deployment, we call that pre-deployment co-location. We must have, that appears in one of the papers. I can be able to share that in the link. That's called pre-deployment co-location, just to kind of make sure the sensors are sort of, they're okay, they're speaking the same language. Fast forward, then we go straight to deploy. And this way it becomes interesting to at least have from the cohort of sensors, we have this deployment in a permanent co-location facility. I highlighted the test centers, the regional test centers we have. So those tensors, the vision is to have those test centers as permanent co-location facilities that are publicly accessible to any person who is interested in validating their sensors. They can be able to come. We have the physical setup allows that to deploy multiple sensors. So that is where then we test, we evaluate the sensors against the reference monitors. Again, I think the correlation threshold was provided in the papers, but I think that's in upwards of 0.99 onwards. I mean, there is no reason if you have you've done all the corrections and you don't have a lot of interference in the control environment. Of course, that sensor will perform quite well, but that performance also degrades because there are other environmental factors. So this is why, to your question about the periodic test. So if you have this as a permanent co-location, and because we're using sort of the machine learning approaches, allows us to then periodically, like every month, every quarter, periodically have this automated. And our work right now is currently to try to build to keep this to work on automation of the calibration for the sensors. Unfortunately, to keep it more localized, you need to have at least reference monitors locally in each of the cities. Although we know that in terms of the behavior, a lot of the data and the data seems to be, agreeing. The pollution pattern seems to be the same, at least from the spatial temporal point of view. But that doesn't take away the fact that you will have some variations that are context specific, and that's why it is really important to have these regional test centers. Maybe even scale up and have at least each of the cities within, say, a country have all this access to these reference monitors to keep this going. So in summary, it's not a one-off undertaking. This has to be, done periodically. That also includes even the sensor maintenance themselves, making sure that the completion criteria that you've set up, I think we set completion criteria at least 75% for each sensor. So without that, then we cannot really use that data. We would have to limit the analysis maybe to the period for it that is available. I think I'll pause there and yes, let's take other questions. And
I think there are some questions or thoughts. How long do the sensor typically last once? So I think that is similar to the question asked by one of the participant. Like, how long do the sensor typically last once if it is deployed? And to add on to that, like there is also one more question for a city like Delhi where there is a issue of high dust load. How the issue can be, how do you address those issues, and how frequently do you replace the sensors?
So, if we talk about Delhi, so the first question, what was the first question? Okay, how long do sensors typically last once deployed? So actually, it depends. So if we talk about extreme pollution condition, and also so if we go or talk about the technology behind the sensors, then there are actually two or three. One is plant tower based, and the other one is sensorium based. So, the ratio of failing of plant tower in extreme polluting condition in Delhi NCR is comparatively higher. So in winter, so sometimes what happened with our project examples, I can say that uh, sensors can easily run in pre-monsoon, uh, post-monsoon, and monsoon time. Like, and when if we deploy the sensor in February, it will easily run till uh, October. But as the extreme pollution comes, it starts degrading. So if we use plant tower based sensors, right? So the life of plant tower also varies with the season, but like we have multiple projects, some are in Bhopal. So the same sensor, the plant tower can run till 2 years, but in extreme pollution based condition, it depends. Sometimes it survive for more than a year or 2 years, but sometimes it doesn't survive. But the sensorium based or the OPC based sensor, their life is comparatively more. So in the Gurugram, we have more OPC sensorium based sensors. Then there now it's being almost, they have like two pollution times are almost over, and the sensors are running fine. And the company, the manufacturers are also saying that these sensors will run minimum 4 to 5 years. But if the major or the something happened with the device, we make sure that within like within 24 hours the sensors will be replaced. It depends, it's completely depends on the PM concentration, season, and also the multiple other factors. If the emission rate, like if the sensor is deployed very close to the chimney where it's continuously emission is very high, the sensors hardly survive for a month. So this also, and in the rural area actually we noticed that the uh, survival of the plant tower based sensor is comparatively lower. And across in like in summer season also, because they are using more biomass burning in specific time, so that's why sensors but if we talk about the overall sensor manufacturer or the sensor quality, easily survive 3 to 4 years.
Do you like to add, based on your experience in testings multiple sensors?
Yeah, sure. So I'm smiling because whenever people don't often ask the people don't like the answer that starts with it depends, but unfortunately we always have to sort of like say like it's important to qualify some of these questions. But yes, it actually does depend. This areas where you could have a sensor maybe even 3-4 years, if it is, if it is not heavily polluted. I think for obvious reasons we have like a dust, and again, to be fair to Delhi, I think many the lots of cities I know in Africa that's equally dusty as well, and we experience such challenges. And one of the most common maintenance activities we actually do is cleaning the sensors, like cleaning the dust from the sensors. So it's to ensure that at least to keep it running longer, because otherwise, if we don't do that, you might even have just a couple of months. So that question is can be context specific. So it's possible to have a sensor last up to 3-4 years. It's also possible to get just a couple of months, depending on the environment. And I hope that answers the
Yeah.
two questions about the dust and the dew. Yeah.
Yeah. Also, like you both talked about the sensor performance, and like you see how it is performing. So, how do you detect there is like degradation in performance or drift in calibration? What is the method generally adopted? And I also would like to ask, like you mentioned about cleaning of sensors, like that is something. No, does how do you do that? Is it simply detesting it, or can you also share the method that you use for doing that?
Yeah. So I think one thing we've been trying to do, I'll start with the question cleaning the sensors, is really to support, because we're supporting, again, speaking to the point of the most cost-effective way to run a network. We are supporting network partners in different cities to be able to manage this locally, so that doesn't require someone maybe traveling from Kampala or whatever to go across countries just to maintain sensors. So there is basic maintenance checks that can be undertaken. We have this documented. the cleaning of the sensors, essentially, be able to open the sensor box and just kind of dust removal mechanism in a basic and just try to make sure that, but we have all this well documented, again, just to ensure the sensors, we keep the sensors in check. But at the same time, we've also incorporated additional design features that includes like a fan that allows us to, have some sort of autonomous maintenance within the sensor itself. So that also happens. I don't know, how do you monitor the degradation? So we don't have much time, but I think what we've done is build a platform that allows us to check all these performance indicators I highlighted. One of them is the correlation network uptime. Is the data available? Because if the sensor has been off for a couple of days, then that's a flag. You flag that, either take it down or know what's going on, or just kind of monitoring those a lot. So, but no, we do that digitally because it's difficult to kind of imagine going to these deployments are scattered in different corners of the continent, so that cannot really be practically possible to do that physically. So we have this, at least the digital platform that allows us to do that, at least monitoring, and we have like some set points, and you get all these alerts that come up, and then we're able to work with the local partners to fix this problem or take appropriate action. So again, it's a process that doesn't requires us to constantly be engaged, and maybe that goes to the question of understanding the most what's the cost, what's the framework when it comes to costing the network, the sensor network, is to factor in all this consideration in terms of the human resources to be able to do all these things in almost in a timely fashion. So I think the digital platform has been very, very resourceful in trying to make this happen. Right, I'll pause here. Maybe Sophia has.
Yeah, Sophia, would you like to add?
Actually, I've already shared over the chat.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you so much. Similar to the question that Prince had on collocating the sensors. For instance, if a researcher is from a tier 2 city or a tier 3 city where there are like very few reference grade monitors or no reference grade monitors to collocate, how do you advise them to start their research work on deploying low cost sensor in the region? How they can collocate, like how they can approach different people to start their research.
So, now we are living in the internet, good internet facility in India. So either they can reach out, they can Google whoever is working or who has a good calibration or co-location facility. They can reach out to any of them, whoever is close by. Or the other thing is they can actually co-locate two sensors at one environment condition. They will get the idea of the performance of sensors. Apart from that, the manufacturer also provides the certification, calibration certification. So they can carefully go and read or can ask, can get the support from the manufacturer also, because the all the manufacturers across India or like with whom we are dealing, uh, they actually collocate all they have in-house calibration facility also. So they calibrate the sensors in-house during the after the manufacture, and then they ship the devices to the like institutes or whoever is the personal user of that. So either they can collocate at research institutes, because there are in Delhi or easily in most of the cities, not cities actually, in most of the states there is some good institutes which have the calibration facility, either it's manual or like the regulatory monitoring. So there they can do. Apart from that, they can actually reach out to CAQMs also, because CAQMs also, if they get good support letter, then CAQMs also allow the calibration at the like we usually call it in-field calibration. So whenever we set up a network, we make sure if in a one state there are 30 or 12 or 5, whatever the number of the CAQMs, we make sure our devices should be calibrated with the CAQM also. So yes.
Yeah, quickly, I have an experience to share there as well. I think that's a very practical question. One thing we found very useful is having the regional collaboration, like communities. And for example, in Africa, we've started the Africleaner network. Within the network, we have all these thematic communities. So it's easier for us to connect new researchers, new entities with people already doing, things like this. So we're really doing, and one of the areas, I think one of the issues that have been coming up is how we can scale up this regional center so that we can be able to, someone starting from 0, 1 has access to the resources that allows, they know where to start from, they know who to speak to. And two, it then becomes, we can also actively, facilitate that. So I think that has been something that has been very helpful, at least in our setting. I also know that there's other global initiatives like the AQMX. AQMX is a air quality management exchange platform where, again, it's envisaged some of these things you could easily find resources, because I think this is not an India problem. I think it's a problem, that really cuts across. So if we have all these shared resources and also avenues to always share experiences on what we have, and in a way that allows upcoming initiatives to access the same resources, then makes it easier for them not to go through the same struggles of redoing what has already been done. Yeah, I think that's all I wanted to add.
Thank you, Leo. I think that is really useful to know, and I can also share the web link of AQMX website in some time. And there is also one more question for Sophia. Sorry, I think you missed. So you mentioned about the when compared to Sensorian and plant tower based, the durability is better for Sensorian. So can you also share your
Yeah.
experience on sensor accuracy and sensitivity of the sensor? And yeah.
So actually, Sensorium and Plant Tower. So Plant Tower is a little bit cheaper than the Sensorium, right? Plant Tower, we can, both are performing well, but in extreme PM concentration, the failure ratio of Plant Tower is comparatively higher than the Sensorium. So if you are using in Delhi, especially in the extreme pollution time, I would suggest to go for Sensorium. And also, if you are monitoring only PM 2.5, then go for Sensorium. Plant Tower, but if you are talking about PM 10, then I would suggest to go for OPC. That is a little bit higher in cost. Apart from that, Plant Tower only measure PM 2.5. So yes, so it depends where the usage actually. But we have noticed that the failure ratio of a plant tower in extreme pollution time is comparatively higher than the sensorium. So that we have noticed, and with our experience with multiple projects, we can say this. The same plant tower, if we set up in the South India where the condition is pretty much clear, then yes, definitely it can run for years, 3 to 4 years. The sensor is not going anywhere. Sometimes the plant tower also run in Delhi NCR, but we still prefer to go for sensorium because in Delhi NCR, because of this, because then unnecessary, it take extra burden if the sensors frequently getting failure, going to the field, getting it replaced is actually taking lots of time. So that is why, otherwise, both are good to be, in my point, from my point of view, both are equally good, but it depends on the usage, where you are using it, and at what environment condition you are using. Yes.
Thank you. Would you like to add?
And one
Yeah.
more point I would like to add. So we prefer, whenever we are using plant tower, in one sense, in one air monitor, we make sure that instead of using one, we use two plant towers, so that the bias, if the one channel is not working, then we will get the outcomes from the other channel.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Sophia. Do you have anything to add to this?
Not much, but I think
Okay.
just to say that it's in choosing the sensors to use, it's important to always acknowledge some of these considerations, knowing that because the sensor or monitoring unit is good for one application doesn't necessarily mean you use the same thing, and that's why emphasizing the local at the test or evaluation at the point of usage is really critical, because it's also true that it might have failed elsewhere, might also actually work in other settings. I think it's just important to kind of be very context specific when we get all these sensors to use for our projects.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Dio. I think we have answered almost all the questions. So if I've missed any questions, free to raise your hands and ask your questions. And I really thank Dio and Sophia for this wonderful presentation and also the engaging discussion. I totally enjoyed the discussion. Like, there was a lot of questions on, the field challenges, what the researchers feel or they undergo on the ground. Thank you so much for taking your time and to explain that. So the slides and the recordings will be available on the website, and our next session is scheduled for February 3rd and it is on data. It is on managing the big low cost sensor network. And I would also like to share, we have one more. Um, I also would like to share that we have our uh, so like in October 2025, we released our State of Global Air report, which is a flagship project of HEI's global initiatives. And we are having a briefing very specifically for South Asia, where we'll present the results on exposure, health burden, and the methodology adopted to come for calculating the burden and exposure. So I'll also share tomorrow at the same time. I'll also share the registration link in the chat box. We look forward seeing you all there tomorrow. And I'm sharing the registration link here. If you have any questions for the speakers, please send it to us, and we can help you. We can also get help you get connected with them. Thank you all for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much.